And we are live. So, first off, thanks everybody for joining us for the July 2022 Every Second Matters. This is the second Every Second Matters of the day. Our friend G23 up in Oregon hosted one this morning, which ended a couple hours ago. So, if you're looking for something to listen to on another channel, check out that conversation at some point. And we go live every second of the month to host a room, to offer a conversation, or to host a room that people can join to create a conversation about what our Second Amendment protects. The Every Second Matters project started, or campaign, I guess, started in 2013. A group of people that had been active, chatting and kind of observing the results of Obama's initial 21 or whatever it was, 23 executive actions, and then the lack of any teeth there gave people a lot of gave us all a lot. We were all impressed that that was able to happen without anyone actually pointing the way or leading the way, or we weren't following any recipe, and we could feel the apathy start to happen. And what we came up with after a series of conversations and effort put into coming up with something that we could do to keep the momentum going through the times that we knew would be difficult to keep people's attention on the boring stuff. We wanted to do something, and what we came up with was just doing something on the second day of the month. So people have done different things. Some people wear a t-shirt, some people bring people to the range, some people open carry. Over the years, it's been a long time and a lot of people involved. People have done different things. There's necessarily no one thing to do. We kind of set it up to be no actual tradition, no actual thing other than creating awareness of what our Second Amendment protects. And with that being said, what I try to do is open up a room, as I mentioned, and create a space where people can have a conversation, much like the evenings at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, when everyone has a chance to just have general chats, catch up, and talk about things that are not necessarily urgent, or the things that are at hand at the topics of the conference, but the things that allow us to, as a community, keep the conversation going. So with that, I've said a lot more than I wanted to say. Again, I appreciate everybody joining in. Should I let everybody introduce themselves? Smeggy, I think, are you the first one in here? No, Brooke was the first one in here. Brooke?
No way, I'm not the first. But anyway, hi. Hi, my name is Brooke Cheney. I am a firearms instructor in Connecticut for a Great Start Shooting School. And I have been a political activist since 2010, when I learned that a 10-round mag ban is a gun ban. Is that a good intro?
It's almost like you've said it before. That was a great intro. Thank you. And thanks for joining us. Did you have a class today?
I actually am in between classes right now. It's been a very special 2A day. I was trying to be on G23's thing this morning, and I had the time wrong. So I showed up at 9 a.m. Eastern, and he didn't show up till 10. And I had a class from 10 to 11:30. Then I was on Polite Society podcast at 1 to 2. And then I had another class between 3 and 4. And I'm here with you. And then at 6 o'clock, I must turn into a pumpkin and go teach another class this evening before I am done with my day. So yes, classes all day long.
Are you done with your day after that, or is there a show later on tonight?
Oh yes, and then there's Suicide Prevention Saturday this evening at 9 p.m. Eastern as well. So yeah, done teaching by 7:30 this evening. And it's really kind of cool because I usually don't talk about my students, but the student I have at 6 o'clock is one of the directors for the 211 system that I talk about on my Suicide Prevention Saturday. So my hope is to pick her brain after I finish certifying her for her pistol permit. So yeah, so there's that too. So yes, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight will be Suicide Prevention Saturday.
Dang, so there's a whole bunch to unpack there, but I'll keep introducing. How about, I think Echo was next. You were all out there, and I was over there talking to the guys from the other chat, so I apologize. I don't really remember who jumped in first, but yeah, go ahead, Echo. I can hear you. I just cut you off.
Okay, no, not a problem. Welcome everyone. I'm a reloader and a gun enthusiast, and have been since a very young age. Try to believe in promoting our independent YouTube channels and independent social platforms to make us bigger and stronger, so that we can do things as a entire uh, mass of people and make people aware of what's going on. So just reach out and kind of talk to people. Back to you, G.
Right on. Well, thanks, Echo, for jumping in and being part of the conversation for so long, and also helping to maintain that conversation with your live chats. Then we got Smeggy up there with the puppy.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? It's Smeggy42. I do random chats on my channel, pop up at any given time, so keep an eye out over on the YouTubes. I've been into guns like basically my whole life. Bought my first one in the early 2000s for myself. My dad had bought me a couple when I was a kid, and I've always been a Second Amendment advocate, and I'd say I'm an amateur.
And he's got a very cute puppy.
Yeah, and this is Roy, and he will not stop playing with this toy. Like, he will go for hours.
As far as the Every Second Matters thing goes, for a long time, Smeggy was doing the legislative wrap-up. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, that's true. The legislative updates. I haven't done them in a while. I should probably get back into doing that, but maybe I'll do one later this afternoon. Yeah, just go through what happened in the past month, any bills introduced, passed, vetoed, signed, Supreme Court cases, all that kind of stuff. So anything that has to do with the Second Amendment on the legislative front, state level and nationwide.
And you did that by spending hours and hours of intensive research, scouring the internet and using sources that only you had available to you?
Yeah, basically. But hopefully I would like to be the curator to bring that all into one place, so you don't have to do that yourself. You can just go in and watch my video or
I
whatever.
thought you were just going, I was just kidding. I thought you went to FPC and read basically that one, then you went to GOA and read that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true, but it does take a long time going through all the different ones and then figuring out which ones are repeats.
It's also painful. It really is painful when you start diving into all the things that are happening all the time. So good job, Smeggy. It's something that I cannot handle doing because my brain wants to explode.
Well, and then again, yeah, I don't remember. Did you type it all out also? I thought you just were sitting there reading it. I can't remember anymore.
No, I would just read it. I didn't type it all out.
Yeah,
I would open up all the different tabs, like you had mentioned, from like FPC and NRAILA and GOA and all that stuff.
I thought you just opened the tab and read down the list, but you went in and picked the ones that were worth reading, basically, like help filter. Right. Okay, so that makes more sense. I just thought that I was just trying to let people know, like, hey, if you want to emulate what Smeggy was doing, I mean, basically went live and then read information that's available, and then put that in one place. Because the thing is, you went to all the different ones and found everything, as opposed to spending a half an hour scrutinizing which ones are doubles, like you were saying, or just trying to figure out their websites. For me, that's the annoying part, is having to figure out all their layouts all the time, because there's just so many of them.
Yeah, and then the other thing is the problem with it, if you just read down all of them, is you might have one from the first week of the month saying, contact your people because the vote's coming up. But then the second week is, they voted in the House, so contact the Senate now. And then the third week is, the Senate's about to vote. And so instead of reading each one of those steps, it's just whatever the most current thing is, whether it completely passed or it failed or whatever, then that would be my update. And I'd skip all the intermediate steps. Because a lot can happen in a month, and then sometimes you go months with absolutely nothing happen.
Dude, a lot can happen in a week where it's totally insane.
Yeah, and always be vigilant to figure out when something important's about to happen, because it could be sitting for months and months and months, and then they pass something on Friday night at 10 p.m.
Well, that was sort of the pace back in the day, but I'm just going to say that when Brooke had mentioned like the trying to pay attention to it and the stress, I guess. I think that's their tactic. We were talking about that in one of the other chats today, that their strategy, wait, let me just say the right words. Their tactics haven't changed. Their strategy seems to be to just throw all their old tactics at us at the same time, or at least often and repetitively, where before they would take a pause or a breath once in a while. And I suspect that part of that overall strategy, either intentionally or not, is to wear out our mettle, like get us to quit paying attention and to lose resolve, and wear out the individuals who are all the activists on our side are all volunteers. So, at some point they just can't, like they're, and you have to keep throwing stuff at it. And it's like, okay, well, now we have to do this. Now we have to do this, and keep going back to the well, keep going back to the well. There's only so many people, like you say, there's stress there. So I guess the question is, without just repeating stuff that we talked about in other chats earlier, one, if anybody wants to throw in on that, but then if that is the case, is there any ideas for how to encourage folks to move on and to keep going in spite of? Or
I definitely think it's super important for people to understand that that is the tactic, because like I said, I came into the political arena 2010, 2011. And at that point, here in Connecticut, they had been trying to get that 10-round mag ban passed for over a decade at that point in time. So as far as going back to the well, going back to the well, going back to the well, 1000%, that's what they're doing and always doing it. Unfortunately, it takes something like a school shooting that ends up pushing stuff over their finish line. So in 2013, after we had Sandy Hook, they got their 10-round mag ban. But it wasn't just because of Sandy Hook. It was because they had already been doing this for over, at that point, more than a decade to get that one thing done. And I have to laugh at Schmeggy's hammock, because we just broke ours, and it's exactly the same one. And our dog broke it. So, but it's the biggest, most important thing, I think, is that people need to understand right now is an election season. Election season doesn't start in October or November when you start seeing the signs. It's like we have to take the time to find our pro-freedom candidates who believe in our Second Amendment rights, and we have to support them right now, whether it's knocking on doors, making phone calls, donating money, finding ways to let other people know about them, because we have a very blue state here in Connecticut. And everyone's like, oh, we're going to turn it red, you're going to turn it red. And it's like, no, unless each one of us reach out and try to get more people to reach one more, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's way better if we can take our time and our energy to help get freedom-loving politicians in office versus once we have antis in there and fighting them. Because I've yet to find anything that's super useful about fighting antis. And to be fair, compared to G-Webs, I am a newbie on the block, but I would much prefer to be proactive and get freedom-loving folks in there. So that's my 2 cents.
I will say, with the way that they are changing some of their tactics as far as throwing everything up at one time now and trying to, as G said, test our steel or our iron, it also shows that the other side is starting to run out of plays. In my interpretation of that changing of tactics with throwing everything up at once now and not doing it in selective assaults, is that they are running out of playbook and they're just throwing whatever they can up to try to get something to stick. I think we could be looking at a change in the way things flow from now on, especially if we get enough people energized and out voting.
Yeah, getting people to vote is definitely key, without a doubt. I mean, the other thing is, it would be awesome if they could pass some kind of law where, not that this is pie in the sky stuff, but it's like where they could actually vote line by line on bills versus the way that they do it. which is here's something you want, here's something you don't want. But if you want the thing that you want, you have to also vote for the thing you don't want. And I wish that would actually make be it so they could actually vote on stuff. And also the fact that there should be a limit to how long a bill is. It's insane. The Sandy Hook one, which everyone knows about, is like, I think it was 109 pages. And they drop it, like G-Webs was talking about, at midnight. And then the vote on it is 9 a.m. And I mean, the politicians are just like, are you kidding me? No one can read all of that stuff. So that is the other mind-boggling part to me as the new kid, as far as looking at how this actually works. It's like, wait a second, there's a 1,000-page bill up on the Hill, and I need to vote on it tomorrow based on what a 2-paragraph summary of that thing is. It's like that alone should be illegal. But that, like I said, pie in the sky. If I had my way, we'd have line-by-line voting.
I don't know if there's some reason that there can't be, but I know that that's something that people have wanted for a while. I have a couple of things I've been making notes of here, and this one kind of goes into what I was about to ask anyway. And if I'm interrupting one of you guys, let me know. But if we know that it's been bad to have politicians be corrupt or whatever, so I don't know, obviously there's a lot of different politicians or whatever, but we know a bunch of them are super old. And from what I vaguely understand, because I don't follow them like sports teams or nothing, a bunch of these politicians kind of came in Vietnam War era as like the wave of people that were pissed with the government tactics and the war and stuff like that. And then there's been the Republican Democrat kind of back and forth since then. And, that's played out. But these people are those same people. And a lot of them are got to be aging out at some point. I mean, we're seeing some of them age out, but, they didn't just leave in one class or something. But as they dwindle, I don't think they're being replaced with people our age. I think they're going to be replaced with people who are like a new breed. As the generation moves, the new generation will be younger than us. And I think that creates a bunch of potential for two people. We got Rebecca Schmoy, so she can represent all the people that are aware and willing, right, and able from the 2A side. But then I've been following with a lot of interest, a couple of different interview shows that talk to veterans coming out of the global war on terror into a society that's a total different situation than after Vietnam. These are veterans that are coming out to either stress, and we know that we've got the suicide thing that Brooke mentioned, right? A bunch of that issue is veterans and the issues that you get as a veteran or can get as a veteran. And but the other side of it is there's so much more support within the veteran community. So veterans that get out and create pathways for the next group of veterans, either by example or literally creating organizations or opportunities for employment and pathways literally to help people transition out of a military thing, which again is a big part of stress and a big part of the broken things that we've got that lead to violence and stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is it possible that we could see, and I'm asking Brooke because you pay a lot more attention to politicians than I do, but is it possible that we see like kind of a wave, and I like to say wave or whatever, I don't know a better word, but the older politicians leaving and their vacated seats be occupied by competent veterans who have experience internationally and are upset with the status quo and are coming into with an eraser and an attitude. And I think that 5 minutes with an eraser and a couple of independent centrist, I don't know the right words to say, but to not piss people off, but like politicians that aren't the status quo. Or am I just pie in the sky optimistic, or is that a potential? And if you don't know, I mean, just don't have.
Yeah, no. I mean, so what I've seen is that there's a pecking order. There's a reason why we have Republican, Democrat. It's because they all play the same game. There's really not a huge difference one to the other, unfortunately, in how the actual system works. And I just have to also throw in here that Rebecca, I love her to pieces. She is an amazing debater. Like, if you want to have a conversation, Yeah, she's amazing. So I really, 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 that would be so great to get her in DC. As far as the changing of the guard necessarily being better, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Mainly because I am, how old am I? I'm 52 this year, and I was 40 something before I started to understand the importance of the Second Amendment. So unless we have people coming in that are actually freedom loving and understand the importance of our Constitution, it doesn't matter. The other challenge that I've seen over the past is that politicians who are doing the things we would like to do and want to actually level the playing field so an American citizen is an American citizen again versus being a subject, they're in here, they're slamming their head against the wall over and over and over again, and then they get tired of, you know, hitting their head against the wall. So yes, new blood can be good. New blood also gets tired, just like we talked about earlier, whereas Second Amendment advocates, we get tired of fighting the same fight. Like I said, it's a 10-round mag ban for over a decade until they finally got it through. So could we? Yes, if we support the people who are there. And the other part of it is to make sure we support them once they are in office. Because just last week, not a Second Amendment thing, but our governor raised the diesel tax 25 cents. And I told everyone I talked to, I'm like, please call them, write them in and say, please call a special session for this. And some people are like, oh yeah, well, my rep totally goes the way that I want to, so I don't need to. And I'm like, no, it's the other way around. It's like, if I am your rep and I support what you do, I need you to call in. I need you to write those emails and tell me that I'm doing what you want, because the whole game is a numbers game and you need to show that you're supported. So long-winded answer to your question, G-Webs, but the answers could be good. Yeah. But we have to make sure we continue to support them because it's a hard row to hoe.
So first off, Toby jumped in from Cape Gun Works, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining.
Oh, next door neighbors practically.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, guys. The day got away from me a little bit here. It's been a busy day.
We started at whatever time, but then it's all about people jumping in and staying as long as they can and having kind of a casual thing. So yeah, no worries. If you've ever met Brooke from Great Start Shooting School in Connecticut.
Hi.
No, nice to meet you, Brooke. And so yeah, you're in a similarly
horrible state. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
we can, when we travel with our guns across the nation, they say, where are you from? And you say Massachusetts or Connecticut. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like you lost a kitten or something. It's really not awesome.
I'm not exactly sure where Echo is located, but did you do this on purpose? The whole top row is from anti-gun places? Because I'm behind enemy lines in California right now.
No, at first I was going to have the dog in between, so that way looks more normal. But then Echo's in Florida, and I'm in Arizona, so now it looks a little bit better. Actually,
anti-gun up top and pro-gun on the bottom.
Well, I just like putting humans on top and our icons on the bottom, because usually if I pop something up, it squishes us, I think. So, but anyway, so we kind of just chatting here, and Brooke, you've got like more awareness of the politician thing. So I appreciate your answer, and be as long-winded as you want. Honestly, that's what it's about, to have a conversation and not just have to do 5-minute bullet points, quick, between commercials type of conversation. So
and like I said, it's super important to just keep supporting those who can. But I have to answer AR Guns, the 1776. Because his thing about gun-free zones are what caused a lot of shootings. So there are absolutely 100% gun-free zones are a magnet to shooters or criminals, because that is why they choose the target. And there are actually reports out there from the FBI, DOJ, Department of Education regarding the fact that like mass shootings in schools are generally done by cowards who are specifically picking out gun-free zones, so that they're going to commit suicide when they're done anyway. And that is why gun-free zones are so dangerous. And for those of you who saw Play Society the podcast this afternoon, we were talking about how New York is trying to make everywhere a gun-free zone right after the SCOTUS decision from last week. So that's kind of that. And yes, I am leaving in about 20 minutes. So that's when
Okay,
I'm
so let me
talking.
just clarify from your answer, then you do think there will be a change, I don't know what to call it, like a wave of the older politicians leaving office and something new replacing them?
Yeah, but I just know that it's like as much as we don't have an imperial government, we do have a rite of passage is sort of how it all works. So Blumenthal and Murphy, which you all know, because you got to love our anti-gun senators here in Connecticut. They're the most anti-gun people out there. But it's like when Blumenthal goes to step down, there's going to be someone who's been groomed and chosen to go in his spot. It's not like I could pop up there and say, well, if I was a Democrat, I could see about being that. But it's very, very hard to change the direction of the vote, right? It's the political thing is this huge, ridiculous super tanker that takes an hour and a half to make that 2-degree right turn sort of thing. So as people get out, we get people in. And then once they are in, we have to remember to support them because it's a thankless job. It's pretty much a crap job. And you're expected to know everything about everything. And this is one of the things like, I actually have a sticky on my thing that says politicians need your help because you know about guns. So you will know that the insane law that California, Smeggy, just passed about having every piece of this thing have a serial number on it, how it's physically impossible to do that. I mean, and this is the other challenge is that politicians need to hear from you because they really don't know anything about firearms because they're supposed to know about firearms, healthcare, the labor laws, pharmacy, all of this other stuff. So it's super important that people find their voice and do reach out and help.
Well, let's take a second, unless somebody's got something, and I got to try to play host. I'm not saying I'm good at this. So if I'm cutting anybody off, just boarding house rules, reach in and make a point. But that's fair. I wanted to touch on your other part of your answer to that question about supporting politicians. And I have a kind of a question there, but well, let me just ask that one. So again, with the potential of them putting shooting all barrels, like just throwing everything at us this time around, for whatever the reasoning, that's what they did do. What about the concept of waking up the voting pool to actually supporting politicians or getting involved, if nothing else, for this issue, and then being on board for the politicians and all that stuff that's necessary?
Absolutely. It's so when I was little, I was this small when I was a child. No, just kidding. My grandma did Amway, and it was each one reached 3, and then those 3 reached out to 3 more. And the thing I tell people is you have to find what your passion is. I got into competitive shooting, and that's what got me into learning that a 10-round mag ban was a gun ban, which then I was invited to go testify against that because I knew something that I didn't know before. And then as I learned the importance of being an American and what freedom really meant, because prior to that, I never voted. I didn't know who the candidates were. I didn't know anything about the Constitution to speak of. And again, I was like in my 40s for when all of this started. So you have to find something that gets you excited. So whether it's manufacturing or anything to do with it, you have to get excited about the thing so that you will have that energy to go forward and do this. It's competition. So wanting to have safe children was why I got into guns. Then I got into going up and talking and traveling and all of that, and then reaching out to more people. And it's like each one reach one. Not everyone you talk to is going to be excited about what you're doing or how you're doing it, but you can help them find their way in that all our politicians are just people. None of them are special or have or know everything. Some of them will listen to you. Now, here's the other side of it.
I got to interrupt because we're hitting too many points here. It's like fishing. It's shooting, right? We're a bunch of shooters, right? And fishing adjacent, though. So you don't go fishing. It's not called catching, right? You go out there and you attempt, and every once in a while you catch something, right? And you figure out what works, but you do that through repetition and a lot of forgotten failures, right? Which are,
Right.
we're really learning opportunities. That aspect of it. And then, dang it, I got to take the dog off at some point. It makes it distracting, and then I'm trying to talk.
But the dog is so cute. You love the dog.
Because there's that aspect, and then what was the last part that I interrupted you on?
Just that you have to find what your thing is. So the last part I was going to say is talking about DC Project, and we also have to be a bigger thorn in the side of the antis. In that, if you happen to have a representative who does not support freedom and Second Amendment, you also have to say, hey, Blumenthal needs to go. You need to help me vote for the other person that's coming up against Blumenthal. Is Blumenthal up this year? Yeah, Blumenthal's up this year, for example. So it's like we have to play both sides of it. It's like we want to support and hold up the people that are doing what we ask them to do, and we have to be annoying to those who are not, because the antis are really good at kind of being jerky. We are not so good at being jerky because we don't like to do that to other people. But we do have to do more of that too. Toby says yes. But look, who's GunTuber Academy? He or she's got to introduce themselves.
Clover Tack from Texas has a bunch of different projects, and for whatever reason, he's logged in as GunTuber Academy. When you log into this StreamYard, it requires you to go through YouTube. I just do that as a step so that weirdos don't come in here and be weird, right? So you have to log into his GunTuber Academy, which he can tell you what that's all about. Thanks for joining us, Clover.
Okay. Oh, I didn't necessarily do it on purpose. I was logged in under that on YouTube doing some things, but yeah, I was just trying to be incognito, I guess, more than anything. Yeah, that's a project that I split off. I don't spend near as much time on that channel as I should, but with a little bit of my background on the nerd side of things and helping other creators and stuff like that, I made the decision. I don't know how long it's been now, but a while, quite a few months. I decided to get that off of the main, GunTuber style channel and off onto something on its own. So that's what that is. Same person, just more nerd related stuff than gun content.
So I wanted to follow through because I know Brooke's got to take off here in a second, but to emphasize the other aspect of what one of the facets that the DC Project has created, or what do you say, like a facet of the DC Project that has created 2022. The reason we're in 2022 and they weren't confidently dropping an assault weapons ban on us at a national level, like that guy dropping salt in the meme, like they couldn't walk up and confidently drop an assault weapons ban because they understand that that's not going to work, because they've had for 7 years the DC Project coming up and meeting with them. And as you kind of mentioned there, as you walk away, here's me and here's my story, remember it or not. But next time someone tries to give you what's the word, like sell you up the river or whatever, no, what's the word? Sell you a can of beans, I don't know, whatever the word is. Here, you can find out what the real deal is. And politicians, knowing you're there, the political strategists on the other side going, we can't just depend on their ignorance or their unawareness anymore. They know that gun ownership has changed, that the gun owners are different now. We actually hear things that are not just emotional heartstring stuff, and we're not just hearing ineffective knee-jerk reaction policy. We're hearing people with rational, like lawyers, everybody from every walk of life is the DC Project. We can talk about that. But, you all come there and you give them that resource. You walk away and say, anytime you need us, we're there. And that's what I wanted to say, is that element of the DC Project is often overlooked. I will debate anybody at any time that is why they weren't able to confidently throw an assault weapons ban on us, because trust me, they would have liked to throw an assault weapons ban. That would have saved them a lot of black eyes and a lot of political whatever, but they couldn't because they know that that's not going to fly. But you kind of mentioned it. I think the reason I stopped and to reiterate all this is being that resource for your representative is priceless. Representatives don't know nothing. We don't want representatives that are robots or some kind of brainiacs or some kind of savants or something. We just want representatives that do our bidding and then get out of there and leave us alone, right? Like we want them to just be employees. So we expect them to have a staff to know stuff, and we expect them to have a Rolodex or a contact list of people who are their authorities, right? And that's what you're suggesting, right? Like, be the authority, like call your representative. Yeah, don't expect them to be like, oh man, you called me, you're right, I'm going to change my opinion because that's how it works. No, they're going to be like, you know, whatever. But like, you can say, hey, if you ever get something about, these are the things I know about cars, and if you're going to talk about solar panels, and if you're going to talk about guns, or if you're going to talk about fishing, and you're going to talk about guitars, and you're going to talk about guns, here's me. And now they know that there's people out there that care, but they're not just yelling into the phone. They're offering that resource, and they care. They want you to show up when they come down to Tucson. They want me there. So they're going to be like, hey, we're going to talk about XYZ. Can you be expert on this? And guess what? If you're got any kind of presence, any kind of reach, you think you're not valuable times 10? If a regular phone call is worth 10 people, I've heard, what's a phone call from a content creator worth? So anyway, I'll leave that, you know, I just wanted to put out there, reiterate the idea that we can be resources to those representatives. We don't expect representatives to be robots or perfect. We want them to be fallible humans, and we want the system to work, right? And we can influence the system by letting them know, by educating them, hey, what you just voted for is stupid, and not yelling and screaming, but telling them, hey, that was a dumb move, and here's why. Now, here's what you can do to correct it.
Okay.
I'll shut up.
This is that. No, I mean, that's the whole point, is that you want to be in there before that. You want to be in their backyard, in their back pocket or whatever, prior to them even getting in. So before that bill even comes before them, you can actually be like, oh yeah, this doesn't work because of this. Because like I said, that Sandy Hook bill that we have, it's like literally lawyers have looked at it and said, we don't know what's actually legal here because the way they wrote it, and they didn't know what they were talking about. But Di always says for us to be the armor for our politicians. We need to be the ones who say, oh yeah, this is what I know. This is like, yeah, serializing every part of every gun, not going to happen. Can't happen. But it's just hard because you just have to keep going back to the well and finding stuff up. I think that another thing, because you're talking about the assault weapons ban, it's like, I had an anti-gun friend of mine send me an article saying that crime went down over the 10-year AR ban that Clinton had. And I read the article, and it's just like, this is such garbage, because I've studied this and I know this. So for the 10-year, for those of you who don't know, which I'm guessing most of you already do, but it's like, you need to be able to explain this and articulate it to your friends and family. It's 10-year AR ban. What happened? Crime did go down. Did long gun crime go down? No, it actually went up in the middle of that. But the way that the article was written was it took different pieces from different reports. So it had true information in it, but so far out of context, it was a big fat lie. So to be able to see that stuff, know that stuff, and be able to explain it to someone is like, and also realize most people will not listen to you because they're, oh, no, the headline says this AR ban is, was successful in reducing crime. And I'm like, nope, mental health reduces crime. So, yeah.
So also, to jump in off of that with the assault weapons ban, after it went away, crime still continued to go down. So It's like, really look at all the data from the early 90s up till now. Like, it peaked somewhere in the middle of the 90s, started going down, and it's really been going down ever since, except for like the last 2 years, it kind of bounced up a little bit.
Yeah, well, because what happens is, if you actually look at crime, when the economy is good, crime is low. When the economy is bad, crime is high. And I mean, it's actually that simple. But with that, I will bid you gentlemen all adieu. I have to go teach some more gun stuff to other people. So I will watch the rest of this on a replay. But thanks for having me.
For jumping in, especially on a busy day, and looking forward to your suicide prevention Saturday project.
Oh yeah, that's right. See y'all at 9 o'clock, or some of you at 9 o'clock. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Brooke.
I appreciate letting me kind of dominate the chat, because I knew Brooke was going to jump out, and she's, of the people I ever talk to or have a chance to talk to, it's not like we talk all the time, but having a chance to have the back and forth with her in the chat like this, she hangs out with more politicians than anybody I know. So I just was curious. I have this theory that the old politicians are going to, kind of all say goodbye at the same time, because they all got to be friends with each other. They're being old in the Congress together, and the last few aren't going to be like the last old ones there. So I'm guessing they're going to check out. And I'm seeing so much of the frustration from the military interviews that, and now I see a couple of them running for office, that, you know, I just like to think that the next generation or the next wave of politicians are going to be a little bit more like, let's get some erasers and let's pull back the reins and let's remove some of this stuff, and basically just be a challenge to the status quo that everybody's frustrated with. I'm super optimistic, so we don't have to keep going down that. I was just kind of explaining why I was focusing on Brooke's insight there. I'm going to try to read chats. Anything anybody's got on their mind? Toby, I guess you haven't been to an Every Second Matters before officially, so thanks for jumping in.
First time. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Just try to recap if you're not familiar. These formats, this getting together in a we call it a lobby, or getting together in an open room like this with just a bunch of people. It has been going on since 2010 approximately, and then YouTube on 2012 we started, like, YouTube gave us a feature like this, and then soon after Obama came out with the executive actions, right? And then there was resistance to that, and at the end of 2013 we kind of were all in these conversations, and we could all kind of see the apathy. I think we had probably seen like the last of the 2A rallies, and just like the last of the, you know, people being aware that there was there was something to be concerned about, because Obama had kind of stopped being aggressive about it. So anyway, we saw this apathy and we thought, what could we do? Like, you know, just as people who are aware that this stuff comes in cycles and waves, what can we do to do something through the lulls so that when we need it, we're not starting from scratch. We're not rebuilding the mousetraps and all that. So what we did eventually came up with was doing something on the 2nd of each month. And my part of that, I guess, what I've done over the years is open these rooms. And I think when we talked about the Gun Rights Policy Conference, you hadn't been to one, but you've heard about them before, where everybody, all the gun rights organizations get together and meet for a weekend. And over the evenings, they have an opportunity to just kind of shoot the shit and have something to drink and just have these casual conversations. And that's what I wanted to do, just have a place for activists to chat, where we're not on the spot, we're not interviewing each other, and we're not necessarily just chatting about the news of the day again, but instead trying to keep the conversation moving forward, giving each other some inspiration and some, I don't know, just, you know, a conversation that folks can be part of, and let the conversation keep moving, like I say, so that we're not just stagnant and become that echo chamber that people always, you know, don't want to.
I kind of wish I didn't trip over myself and miss the whole first half of that, because I really liked what Brooke had to say. And it's interesting because the opportunity that I have with our facility, especially during election year, has afforded a natural attraction to these politicians. And as we speak, there's a girl who's running for state senate out on my range that she organized. She just asked for a special rate and we gave her one. And she had like 20 people sign up to come shoot with the candidates. And so she's out there on the range with, 15 people, most of which probably aren't gun people. And they just want to come meet her because she's running for state senate. And it's a good opportunity for her to showcase the fact that she's actually pro 2A. And, she was a state trooper and a U.S. Army firearms instructor. And so the Second Amendment is a big issue to her, but
and it sounds like she's super competent too. So she's not she's out there fumbling or nothing. She's going to be able to, be a good a good ambassador.
Right. And the funniest thing is, because the guy who's running against her found out about her coming on my radio show and whatnot, he wanted to come on and kind of pound the table a little bit about how pro 2A he is. So I think it's cool that these candidates are like, they're all jockeying for who's more pro Second Amendment, and I'm like, hey, this is in Massachusetts. This is amazing. Is it, going to get them the win that they need at the end of the day? Maybe not. But at the very least, It's getting people who are not per se gonna, bring guns up in their everyday course of discussion. Like, I look at their flyers and they're all about education and taxes and, transportation and housing and blah, blah, blah. And usually gun issues don't even make the back of the doorknob card, So and I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this, but I've long suspected that the Second Amendment is a sleeper issue that people are crazy not to make a major platform plank on, because in this state, a very blue state, people who have run on pro gun control, like anti-gun platforms, have lost major races. So even the people who are very, liberal or, left of center per se, and again, I'm not trying to just make this all about politics, but they still believe in the right to keep and bear arms. You're always going to have the certain sector that wants to, go full commie, but there's all these other people that probably have a left of center voting record, but are very much in favor of the Second Amendment. Maybe not to the extent where they want everyone to have, uh, AK-47s and high capacity magazines, but regardless, they, at the most basic platform, they believe in the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms. So
I like to think that it's just because they haven't had it explained to them reasonably. They've had it explained like, oh, why would you want a weapon of war? Like, horrible, horrible. These people are killers and they want horrible violence, instead of this is all the good stuff that we already know. So yeah, I think that they're just unaware.
Mhm.
At least I like to give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
No, that's exactly right. And so I'm hoping, just by, affording the opportunity of politicians who aren't afraid to go out on that limb, an opportunity to really demonstrate how pro Second Amendment they are by having some sort of event at our shop, and whether they shoot or just meet in the classroom and, hey, meet the pro 2A candidates running for office, and it could be whatever office, I don't really care. But that's just something that has kind of a door that's opened up just because of the nature of our business. So, and it certainly educates politicians who are pro 2A in theory, but they're not gun people,
Right, because if that's that's a success for her, they're going to go, what did she do and why was it a success? Where? What happened? Like, how
Right.
come? How can I do that? Oh, I can't do that, but what can I do that's like that? Like, how do I get there? That kind of questions, right?
Yeah.
So,
So
unless you guys, am I interrupting you? Because otherwise, I've got a couple of ways to go into that.
go for it.
I got something real quick, G-Webs.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that's really encouraging when you said that there are people that are like more on the left, but they don't really even care about gun control. So they're not necessarily super pro 2A, but we don't need everyone to be super pro 2A. We just need everyone to not be anti-gun. And I know I've said it before, you guys have heard it a million times, but I really do want to live in a world where I can pick between, all the candidates running and all of them are pro Second Amendment. And then I can finally vote on, taxes or healthcare or whatever the heck else I actually care about.
That's a good. We
So
should
it's
make
just encouraging to hear that there are people on the other side that are still like, yeah, we don't really care about guns, like in a good way. Like they don't care about getting rid of them.
Yeah, like guns are just not on the table anymore. Just like clean water. Like, yeah, well, I want clean water. Nobody's really anti-clean water.
When you talk with people, education is a huge thing. It always is, and you don't even have to be talking about the people that are left of center, but there are people that are centric and then even right of center. That education is a huge thing, and honestly, there's people that are far left and far right on the 2A issues. That education is a problem. So it's not like the people on any end of the spectrum have it all right when it comes to being totally educated. And one of the things that's an interesting conversation I'll often get to is when people bring up the word weapon of war, and I think maybe Toby alluded to that a minute ago. And I'll say, so you don't think people should have pump shotguns? And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, like I've got a Mossberg 590 that's identical to what the door kickers in the military use. It's identical. It's the same exact firearm. And they're like, no, I'm talking about the AR-15. And I'll go, but that's not what the military uses. And you see their head explode. That it's like, wait, we're focusing on one thing and calling it something when there's something totally benign that we're typically okay with that actually fits the definition we're trying to cram this other thing into. And it's confusing for a second, and then their head explodes. And it's always fun, and a great conversation usually comes out of that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a very common. I mean, I like how you put it, because that's a great way to like shift right to the something that they can already agree that you should be able to own, and now point out that it's a weapon of war in the military's eyes, whatever. But I was just talking to someone this morning about that they were having a conversation with somebody who was overhearing. They were part of this, group, but they were very anti-gun in theory because of the education issue that we're talking about. And someone was saying, yeah, I use this AR when I go hunting or whatever. And the lady perks up and says, wait a minute, you hunt with an AR-15? What do you hunt? And he goes, oh, I hunt deer. And the lady's like, well, there's probably nothing left after you shoot it. Like, there's nothing left to eat. And, they got a good chuckle out of that. And most people don't even realize that, just listen to the mainstream media, that the AR-15 isn't even a humane enough caliber in some states to hunt deer with, because it's
Right.
considered an inhumane kill.
But it's a high-powered rifle, man. What are you talking about? It's a
Well, I mean-
high-powered, and I'm like, 300 Win Mag? Anybody? 300 Weatherby Mag? You want to talk high power? It's like 30-06 even? It's like, come on.
Yeah,
John-
Grandpa's Springfield 03 is way more powerful than,
Right. Right.
We've had our, what do they call them? The old, well, I don't know what to call them, but the old things. And I'll hear people talk about them, and I'll be like, maybe I just hang around with people that are more modern, or people that don't say these things. But there's the old stuff that our grandparents used to say or whatever, and it doesn't matter if somebody heard it, then they're hearing it, right? But that all that kind of stuff depends on that ignorance or whatever. John Lott was posting some instances on TV shows where they're just saying some absurd stuff, or like leaning into the fallacies about guns and stuff, in order to either just make it dramatic, or they're trying to get some agenda. Who really cares? But they're emphasizing it, right? That's that whole Overton window, just subtly, confusing the facts about firearms, so that it's real difficult to know how powerful an AR-15 actually is, right? So that's the kind of stuff that, again, they depend on that. But with the internet, it's 2022. People talk to each other. Just incredible number of people becoming educated on their own volition about firearms. And you've got to think that I've been bringing this up lately because I like to evolve the conversation and not just repeat what we've already heard. So all these new gun owners, right? We can have a discussion on whether or not how many of them are new or not, and how many of them are just people transferring guns around. But we had a lot of new gun owners recently. They all have brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and people at work and school and church that they talk to. And that means some of them they talk to about a gun. Maybe they made a decision based on the influence of some of these other people. So that means that individual 4473, if it is a new gun owner, touched potentially, 3 to 5, 6 lives, right? The people that are now aware of guns. And well, if grandma was asking about a gun and grandma bought a gun, maybe guns aren't as bad. So I just think that ignorance that they depend on for those kind of old fallacies and stuff, because that's what's happening. We're seeing the old dusty stuff. They're not even coming up with really, except for the boyfriend loophole. That's about the only thing new on the list, right? Everything else is just old stuff. And it all is like that kind of thing. Like just what you said, somebody who thinks an AR-15 is, I don't know what they, it depends on what movie they remember, right? Like, because guns are magic. They miss when they need them to miss. They're deadly when they need them to be deadly. And they wound you when they need you to be wounded in the script. But, so how could a normal person have any reality? Imagine someone who never drove a car. You come down from Mars or something and you watch movies. you'd be scared crapless to go out on the street, right? Oh, that's going to blow up. Oh, a crash is going to flip a car down the street. How do cars not come flipping down the street? How helicopters aren't flying underneath bridges constantly, right? Like people can detach that reality, but with guns, where do they have the basis? Well, that'll lead me into going back to the Toby on the range thing here, but I want to not monologue the whole thing. So if anybody wants to dig in, go for it.
Yeah, getting back to that conversation with the left of center people, it was at a Christmas party a couple of years ago, I was talking to a guy who, it was funny. Ironically, we were like in the same circles, but had never met prior to this. And he's a resident of Texas. He's a professor at a university. He's a prolific author, and he comes to my area for the summers, and he says, I'm a left of center. He goes, forget that. I'm extremely liberal. He goes, but I love my AR-15. He goes, but if I'm honest, I just don't want anyone else to have one. And I'm like, well, at least you are honest enough to verbalize what you just said. However, and it just opened up a good discussion. But he was like, I love my AR-15. And the circles he runs with back home in his academia, he doesn't even feel comfortable telling people that he owns an AR-15. But I'm like, no, that's actually how we can continue gun rights, and he's like, but I just don't know if I believe in your right to own one. He goes, I want one, but I don't know if I want you to own one. And I'm like, all right, so there's that. It's trying to warm people up and educate them that you own one for all the right reasons. So there's other people out there that want to own them for all the right reasons too. And that's that's a very grassroots effort, I think. But
now you bring up a person who's I'm going to call it extreme, right? Like that's a extreme position, and they're willing to voice it to you. So that's a whole nother level of confidence or confidentiality or whatever that you'd have to have a relationship with somebody, or I guess somebody's just going to walk up and tell you that, I guess. But I have met people that were extreme in a different way, where they would say, oh, if it's my time, it's my time. So this whole idea of defending yourself just doesn't affect them. They just don't have any interest. If it's their time, it's their time. And what about this? What about that? Oh, it's my time. It's my time. And people are allowed to do that. It's a free country. So that's where it's like, well, if that's the case, then guess what? We're never going to be effective with those people. So then we either have to make our peace with that, and hope that their message probably isn't going to get around to everybody, because I don't think there's too many people that are like, oh, well, it's my time, I don't, like some people might live that way, I guess, but they don't really want to admit it. So anyway, all I'm getting at is that there's extremes out there, but I guess I was going to say is, do you think that guy represents I guess I'm calling it an extreme, so like a limited number of people, or you think that's a bigger mindset, larger, what am I trying to say, like more people have that mindset?
I think there is a lot of people that have that mindset, and some of them are warming up to the fact that, hey, look at a lot of people own AR-15s, and it isn't war zones in the streets. So that's the fear. And then when it doesn't realize, they are like, okay, I'm willing to start to talk about it. And what's funny is I got nominated, I don't know how, but I got nominated to be in the Liberal Gun Club as an honorary member. And I said, guys, look, just full disclosure, about the furthest thing from a liberal as it comes, but I will die on a battlefield to enable anyone, I don't care how they vote, for their right to keep and bear arms, and I don't care what your demographic is, who you voted for. If you want a gun, I'm your guy to help you get it. But when they kind of interviewed me and they said, hey, so-and-so said we should make you a member of the Liberal Gun Club. And I said, okay, fine. And I ended up getting this invite to their blog. And it was a really weird thing for me to look at, because I've been in the echo chamber so long, that when I all of a sudden saw this, back door into a blog where people were literally bashing every right-wing stance on taxes and abortion and whatever it was, the big ticket items. And then all of a sudden, but I got to check out my new AR-15. I got this thing and it's awesome. And the, stupid mag ban, I'm limited to 10 rounds. And I'm like, my head was kind of hurting at the end of this because I couldn't put all this together because I was outside of my echo chamber. And but I was like, okay, that's cool. They're intellectually honest about what they are all about, and they're also okay with people having freedom as it relates to guns. And their cause is to try to hold the people that they elect accountable for what ends up happening to guns, gun control. So they're basically saying, hey, knock off the gun control crap, and everything else I'm fine with, but knock off the gun control crap.
They're working to have them remove the guns from the liberal platforms, I guess, right? The platform positions, statements, and stuff.
Well, and that's one of the cruxes, I guess, of the matter, right? Is whichever side you're talking about. And I think and when I say right and left, I mean, absolutist as far as pro-gun, absolutist as far as anti-gun. I don't necessarily mean liberal, conservative, or Republican, Democrat. There's far too many boxes, and I don't really like putting anybody in boxes. But when we talk about either side of center on that issue, the further you get to the outer edge, the more people mix and match their political stances and ideology, right? So you'll get, I'm going to use some far right. You get into some far right, really, seeming, well, I guess, not want to say really pro-gun, but seemingly pro-gun, right? You get over into that spectrum, and then you'll get people that they talk about, quote unquote, gun violence. And they see it almost as they acknowledge like inner city urban, gang or whatever it might be related. But rather than seeing the socioeconomic factors and a lot of the other BS laws that lock people up for seemingly, for victimless crimes and a lot of the other stuff, they see it more as a racial thing, right? And that's bad. Or we had the 2A opinion come down from the court, and then like the very next day we had the abortion thing, right? So you get people that, on either side of that threw things into chaos because they were either for or against one, and odds are, depending on where they fall on that political spectrum, when that other decision was released, now they got a totally different set of feelings they've got to deal with because the pro gun that said yay a good 2A ruling probably said yay this, whereas on the other side they were completely upset with both of them, right? And so it creates a situation to where you've got to step back, I think, for a minute. Talking about crazy. Oh, well, that guy was just crazy that went in and shot up that school. Well, hold on. We can narrow down and kind of define what the mental issue is, but we need to get to that. We just don't want to scream mental health, right? That's a big thing. Because then you start getting into these red flag laws. You start getting into all this other stuff that is minority report. It does away with due process and whatever because it's ill defined, right? We're not talking about people that have necessarily been committed and been diagnosed with mental issues, and mental issues can be a wide range of things. So you've got this swirling mixture of all types of political things, and on both sides, it's really hard for people to narrow it down and just focus on 2A when 2A needs to be focused on, right? If you want to kick into anti-abortion or pro-abortion mode, leave 2A out of it. If you want to kick into, 2A mode, leave abortion out of it. It's two totally separate things, and I don't see why people feel the need to muck up the works and create more divisiveness by lumping things all together.
Well, we're not all going to come together to some giant table and all agree that everybody that sits at the table is going to agree with everybody, right? So I think when you used the thing before about being the bridges or mortar, I think I turned it into mortar. You started with bridges. So people that are watching this, 30-something people are watching this live, however many people end up watching this in the future, we'll turn it into audio and somebody might listen to this. now you're going to go listen to something else, and then you're going to go listen to something else, and now you're going to go to interact with your family and your people at church and work and school and civic organizations and on the bus and at the doctor's office, right? And now you're putting everything that you've experienced together and sharing that, right? So that's, I think, part of it is the people that let people be all into this and that, and then let other people be into that and the other thing, and let some people be into just straight down the middle. I'm only interested in 2A over here, and that person's into 2A and barbecue. We have one of them people, right? And that gets that realm of people that are into barbecue. Look, there's a dog right there. Some people are cat people, but they're not going to be like, oh, I don't like this guy because he's got a dog. But they're going to be like, oh, I like this guy because of 2A. But now the other dog people might come along and be like, oh, I don't know what kind of dog that is. Sorry, Newfoundland. I don't know what kind of dog it is. But somebody's going to go, oh, I know what kind of breed that is. And then see the thumbnail, jump in here, be like, oh, be damned, 2A, huh? Well, I thought those people were weird. Next time there's a conversation, I'm not going to jump in on the, bashing them, because I think they're okay if they got that kind of dog. And obviously I'm not exaggerating this, but I think that I was going to start to say that I think that's that bridge concept, individuals valuing that they are the Second Amendment, right? We are the Second Amendment. And it's just a matter of every once in a while, we got to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, who in the room is into the Second Amendment?
So I'd love to get your input on this, because it's something I've thought about a lot for a long time. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I have a hunch. And that is that, and I hate to keep bringing up the right versus left or right and left. Let's just say, I'm not saying it Democrat, Republican, that
Yeah,
type
the
of
two sides that exist. Yeah, they
Yeah,
get mad
so-
about the liberals, but that's on them.
So to me, it's what I've found, and I don't know it to be 100% true, but when the further toward the right side of the aisle you get, the higher up on the voting list of issues the Second Amendment tends to be. And then, at some point it might even be a top 3 issue or a top 1. It might be the top issue on the, in some cases. But it certainly jumps into the top 5 or the, whatever. And I think the further on the left side of the aisle, and this just happens to be my experience, that even I'll get people that are like, yeah, I believe in the right to keep and bear arms, but it's like it's like doesn't make the top 10 list. It's like 11 or 12, or maybe it's a 8 or a 9. So unless they're an avid shooter or an avid, participant, but just on the theory of the Second Amendment, or not the theory, but the right of the Second Amendment, as far as a voting issue or a, like, wake up in the morning and something you think about that day type of issue, I think it's pretty far down on the list. And so I'm encouraged, as I have seen in the past couple of years. I do know that a lot of people, especially in my area, that probably never had that be the top 10 or even top 5 issue of, their everyday life, have now said, like, wow, this is more important than I thought. And I'm thinking this is a massive opportunity to expand the tent, if you will, under the Second Amendment banner, and get more people that believe in the concept of the right to keep and bear arms. Maybe they don't all believe exactly the same way. And my buddy, I had him on my radio show, and he said, not everybody believes you should have machine gun vending machines in elementary schools. You know what I mean? There's, and if you don't believe that, you're for gun control. So we're all for gun control to a certain extent, right? Because I don't think any rationally thinking human would agree to that. And so just something to kick around or think about. And I'd love to know if that's been your experience, or if it's irrelevant, and if it even matters to the grand scheme of things.
I see it too. I see I think so. I think as you get to the opposite side of the all out 100%, no excuse, shall not be infringed, pro gun, yeah, I think, and rightfully so. I mean, obviously, the Second Amendment is going to drop down on that list as you move away from that end. Um, what I think is what interests me, and I don't know if this is the approach to have the conversation with people like that or what, but I'll give an example of some conversations I've had lately dealing with these last uh, court decisions that have come down. Is there was some people in the gay community that said because of the way the abortion opinion was written that, oh, this is going to open up and now Texas is going to get rid of gay marriage and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, right? It opened the door to this morality thing and a man and a woman in marriage and some other stuff, according to the way they were perceiving the opinion and everything, right? Even though Alito added an opinion in there that kind of countered that, in my opinion, even if you were thinking of Thomas's Alito's thing kind of went the other way. But anyway, um, and I was like, okay, so your move is to, and these are pro 2A gay community people, right? And it's like, okay, so your move is to vote in politicians that agree with the gay agenda 100%, but are against the Second Amendment 100%. And then at what point are you disarmed and subservient to whatever they decide to do or say? At that point, you're a useless idiot or whatever, or a useful idiot maybe, right? Because you've given away all of the teeth, right? Of the security of our rights at that point. In hopes that they continue to allow you to do what you want them to do. And it's like I I understand because I've been in a room before that I was in a Republican. This is one of the reasons I shied away from running for office when I did. But I was in a room and I actually heard Republicans, and I can say this, not right, left, whatever. I mean, they were. This was a Republican meeting. And I actually overheard Republicans discussing trading universal background checks here in Texas, which we don't have, thank God, but trading that um, if we could ban gay marriage. Actually heard that discussion going on, that compromise being made. And I'm thinking, here's the thing, when you give that up, you get where I'm going. Hopefully everybody does with this. You give that up when you're talking about the 2A. Does it really matter what other deals you struck at that point? Because what are you going to do if they decide they're not going to do that?
Well, that has to do with what Toby's saying, where on the voters' list of priorities, where Second Amendment, where gun ownership, and where our rights stand.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it should be important to everybody for that reason, because otherwise you're not.
Fluctuates though. It's not, it's
the first and the second should be paramount. That's my opinion.
But you can't make people care. But so it does happen. The situations create or whatever. Happenstance. It does go up and down. Right. But the thing is, it's up now for sure, right? For lots of different reasons, and often it's up because of they're exploiting an atrocity, right? An atrocity happens, and they jump all over it and uses the opportunity when the iron's hot or whatever to. I mean, it's not like that's the only time they do it. If a flood happens, I'm sure there's politicians jump in and go, oh, this is why we always said that you got to pay us more for flood waters or something, and then when a fire happens, they go, oh, see, this is the reason you gotta. We're just paying attention because it's guns all the time, right? But if that's their tendency, if that's their inclination, I think again, it's awareness, and if it has gone up, and I definitely agree, it seems like it's gone up just because of the swell of people that are around paying attention to the Second Amendment and the rights side of it versus the toys and tools side of it in the discussions that I'm around or paying attention to. I think that it's just a matter of efficiently getting to those representatives the point that this is where that it is up here, and that once the political strategists see that, it doesn't change on the other side. It only comes up when they are upset on the other side, really, or when they lose or something, I guess. But anyway, I think that if I'm cutting off or whatever, I apologize, but I think going back to when you're kind of talking about the range and having the I guess it's not a politician necessarily, but a person who's running, what do you call that? Whatever, the person who's running for office show up at the range. And that's something that they did. Like, in other words, if like right now it's trendy to go throw axes, they wouldn't have been like, hey, it's important to me to go talk to the axe throwing guy. I'm just going to go throw axes, and this is the place we're doing it, right? It sounded like they just needed a place to go shooting, and you're the place to go shooting, if that's right. And that's because it's cool right now. It's trendy. It's an issue that people care about, and she's competent and capable. It's probably something she's got over her competitors or her other, I'm trying to say, what's her name for them? Can't think of it. Not nominees, is it?
Well, the other candidate, I guess. Or
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess I was going to say there's that element, right? That one, they're paying attention and you're able to facilitate that. But then what about, well, first, let me stop because I've been talking for a while too. And I'm trying to just bring it back to, where gun ownership and Second Amendment being a priority to voters and how to get that. What was that kind of question? Like how to get across to representatives and candidates that this is a big issue. And I think by having it at an event, having the event at a place like yours right away, the same thing when you had the radio people come in, it brings people in for the candidate, and now they're comfortable going to a gun shop. All the people that drive by, hey, look at all the to do at the gun shop. Oh, it's because the candidate's doing their thing there, right? Like that normalizes it. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And my whole effort around that is just to force the discussion of guns as it relates to candidates on both sides of the, on both sides of the ballot, or if you will. And I still believe that, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, that the people on either side really care about their rights, and of course not to the same extent like you mentioned. No one at the table is going to all agree on all things the same way, but I really am hoping and this is so much at the top of my mind because of the state I live in and the constant battle and the constant willingness by the politicians to really cram gun control down our throats. But I do believe that the people will stand up for the right to keep and bear arms if it's brought into the forefront. That's really the crux of the whole conversation for me, and the whole effort behind supporting 2A candidates is to get it out there in the open. And I think more now than ever, people, while they're at least receptive to the idea that they might have to be their own first responder, they might not believe, in the right to keep and bear arms to overthrow a tyrannical government, but they at least believe, okay, maybe I am my own first responder now that they've defunded my local police and they've ruled that police don't have a duty to defend me. It starts to get them thinking in those directions. So that's the whole point for me, is to really push it into the top 5 issues. I don't care what the heck other issues you're running on, the other platform you're running on. Let's at least have this discussion and let people from both sides of the aisle see it. So
you kind of alluded to it or mentioned it a little bit before, but when it gets pushed up or whatever in people's list priorities or priority list individually, is that influenced by things like, we know that it's influenced negatively by exploitation of atrocities, right? When somebody does some heinous murders in a specific way because they know that they'll be infamous and they'll get laws written after them potentially, and people, they want to screw around with people, and they're gonna be able to accomplish that by doing it in exactly the script that will get the most bang for the buck. So when that can pull strings, but then things like I'm going to call it the all-out, all hands on deck. I don't know what they call it in the Navy when they shoot all the barrels or whatever. But when they do this like complete onslaught of everything they've had at their just everything they've ever had, basically, they threw at us, and almost a bunch of, well, not that everything stick, but a bunch of it fell off the thing, and some of the stuff stuck. Dang it. So if in that place where they're, I think, indicating, I think Echo brought this up, that their strategy is an indication that they know they're not going to last very long, and that, I guess, I don't know how to say it, but since they kind of brought everything to bear, they brought all their fangs out, they brought all their teeth out, they said everything heinous they could ever say, that we'd ever assume they could ever say. Is that enough to bring people on the fence to be like, hey, wait a minute? And then kind of parallel to that is like the fact that there's 19.8 million AR-15s out there. Are the people that are on the fence able to conceptualize and rationalize and go, if there's already 19.8 million people are telling us is stupid and they're idiots, or do they still hear that AR-15 and get scared and ignore the 19.8 million and the reality that those 19.8 are in the hands of people that are sane and nonviolent? Is that a good question, or am I too far all over the place?
My opinion on that is, I think what you have to take in mind
I'm asking Toby
is
interacts with people in Massachusetts. I know in Arkansas everybody's cool with guns. That's all we ever talk about is people who are cool with guns. I'm asking Toby, who's got experience with folks who are apprehensive in Massachusetts, not necessarily even gun shop people. I'm just saying, like, living in Massachusetts, do you think that, like, the awareness of just the I don't know what to call it, like the what do you call it, like the force they brought to bear for this time around, which is, like, again, all hands on deck, is that enough to get people's, like, awareness? Like, are they perked up? And then the fact that there's all these other guns, do they understand that? Or is that something you can even understand? I mean, is that something
I'm not sure I get down to that level of nuance. And I try not to make a specific gun issue. Like, yes, I want the whole Hughes Amendment to go away. You know what I mean? If I really am sitting there getting into the nuance of the discussion, I try to keep it very general as far as the Second Amendment. And that's the name of this episode, right? Every second matters. So it's really a more broader discussion, because I think what ultimately happens is we live in a state that is the most gun controlled state in New England, and we have the highest violent crime rate. But when the politicians who run on gun control, they like to compare us to the rest of the country and say we have one of the lowest violent crime rates in the country thanks to our tight gun control laws and our extreme approach to the Second Amendment. And all I want to do is point out, but we're the most violent state in New England. So the states to our north, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, which are constitutional carry states, have a far lower crime rate. They don't want to hear that. But the people who are listening are like, hey, wait, yeah, like, if we're really gun control, and if gun control really works, we should have a far lower crime rate than Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, where there isn't any gun control. And so really, I'm just trying to generalize. But the advantage of doing that is that people, in theory, believe in, like, I think it was Echo or Clover who said that the 590 pump shotgun is a weapon of war. That's a great argument, because you don't have to take the AR-15 off the plate for a minute, at least win them over to the 2A argument in general, then show that, like, hey, yeah, you can't even hunt with an AR-15 in most states because it's not powerful enough. But check out Grandpa's bolt action 300 Win Mag. This thing is awesome, and it's awesome deer rifle, blah, blah, blah. So the education comes later. The concept, I think, is the first part. And I think that's the people that's where the battle can be won, because in theory, people like the Constitution. They like their First Amendment rights. They like their Fourth Amendment rights. They like their Fifth Amendment rights. They like their Sixth Amendment rights, and et cetera, et cetera. And so if we can conceptually get, and my theory on this dates back to about 1994, right after the assault weapons ban. In this state, we had a guy who was our attorney general who ran, he was a staunch anti-gun candidate. He actually turned the tide of all the bad laws that we live under in this state. I blame him, because he did something with the Consumer Protection Act and made it so that all of our guns had to be sent out to testing labs and all this stuff. And the legislature went around, along with it. And then they adopted the 94 assault weapons ban in 98. But then in, I think it was 2000 or whatever, he ran for governor. He was the attorney general. And he ran on the platform that I want to ban semi-automatic guns and handguns. Like, that was his platform, one of the main platforms he ran on. And we were nervous as heck as gun owners, because we already knew he was anti-gun. He already held a high elected position. And here is his main plank, was to ban guns. And I'm like, we're going down with the ship. But fortunately, he went down. He wasn't elected. And it made me think, like, okay, as blue a state as I live in, that's a given. People still believe in their rights. So let's center on that. Like, let's make that an issue. And this election cycle is no different for us here in Massachusetts. I have a extremely hostile anti-gun attorney general running for governor, and then a very conservative guy who probably wouldn't win in a head-to-head race with her unless you can bring something out that is really gonna swing the ship. And I think that that's the only thing, is the Second Amendment. It's an issue of rights, constitutional, basic human civil rights. And one wants to do away with them, one's willing to support them. So, if it gets into the nuance of taxes and, every other issue out there, I don't know that he can win. But I do think that he can win based on this. So I keep pushing him in that direction. He's been on my show. I'll have him on again. But, so that's my theory, my working theory about it is, I think there's more people that support the Second Amendment than don't. There's only a slight, majority of those. I guess it would probably be more like a third of the Americans that actually participate in the Second Amendment. But, we got a lot of work to do still, and room to move the needle. But I don't know if any of this is a winning theory or not, but at the very least, we'll bring some people alongside.
That's sort of what the second part of my was trying to get across here, and I wasn't doing a very good job at it. But like the idea that if the people, in other words, I think what you're saying is there's people in Massachusetts that don't necessarily even want to own a gun, but they don't like the idea that there's laws preventing people who should or could or whatever. So what that means, we've got allies who we're not going to win over by talking about our toys and tools. We're just going to talk theoretically about government overreach, or maybe just the, hey, I want the ability to be free, versus some people would probably like the government overreach approach. But if that's the case, then I guess my question before was about the, whatever, I keep hearing the number 19.8 million ARs. So you would think someone who's rational would go, okay, there's 19.8 million ARs and we all still exist. Like we're all alive. So those 19.8 million things can't be that dangerous. So now that I've known that, I'm going to be more comfortable supporting people's right to own an AR-15. Is that the kind, I guess that's what I was trying to say, is if those people are out there, and then you just said those people are out there. So will that kind of facts, like would making memes, in other words, that give them just the awareness that, I don't know the words for this. You guys that listen to Walk Talk America more than me, or maybe retain some of that more than me. What is the thing that Jake will say, the unintended consequences, but he has a fancier name for that. Like, so that when you talk to a politician, you go, but what about the unintended consequences of this bill? And then they go, oh yeah, we're going to be asked about like how to pay for it and who it affects.
Yeah, the law of unintended consequences or something like that. Where
Yeah, I mean that's what we always talk about it. But I know when we talk to some of the people from Walk the Talk America that focus on bridging the gap between mental health and firearms, the industry and the physicians, they got this Dr. Jake. Is he a doctor? But whatever, he has a better word for that or a better phrase for that.
intersection is what I think he uses, right?
He definitely describes it as that. But anyhow, that's I guess the idea that is just bringing that kind of information, like maybe infographics or just general data that like, hey, they say this, but they're ignoring the fact that not just like the other states are worse than us or we're as good as other states, but the fact that like, hey, they're saying that gun owners don't care, but in reality, one of my things is they say, oh, move the age from 18 to 21. Well, what about everybody who's enlisted, gets married, now their spouse is living on a base or off base maybe with a family, a young family, somebody gets deployed unintentionally, unexpectedly, and now everybody knows that that spouse, 18 to 21, is by law in a victim class. And nobody wants to see anybody in a victim class, and that's something that gets created when you say you can't buy, you can't buy that. You live out of state, you don't have family, like you can't get it transferred to you, you're out of luck. So that kind of information gets somebody who's like, well, that's not me, but that's not right.
Right. And that's another interesting issue. And, because I bought guns, like I was showing off, I don't want to hold it because we might get kicked off YouTube, but I just got my
No,
first
I don't care
handgun.
about that. Go ahead.
What's that?
You're not being weird. They don't care.
They don't. Okay. So this is my Colt 1911 that was the very first handgun I bought when I was 18 years old. And at the time, you could buy handguns at 18. And I just got it back from Nighthawk Customs. I sent it out to have their whole, whatever package done to it. They basically made it a Nighthawk. It was a Colt, now it's a Nighthawk, and it's all beautiful, and I love it. I haven't shot it yet, but the point I was going to say is I get asked that question all the time. Shouldn't we just raise the age from 18 to 21? And I'm like, well, I bought guns at 18, and yeah, I probably, the brainstem still wasn't fully attached, and there was some stupid moments I had with guns, not that put anyone in danger or illegal activity, but I definitely wasn't as responsible a gun owner as I am now. And the if I could have that moment that my extremely liberal friend who said, I love my AR-15, but I don't think anyone else should have one. My version of that would be like, I love the fact that I was able to buy a gun at 18, but my son who's 19, I don't want him to have a gun. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's a blanket statement. I don't feel that way about every 19-year-old, but I feel that way about my own 19-year-old son. And when he was 16, I probably didn't feel that way because he he seemed a lot more responsible at 16 than he does now at
Wait,
19.
An
So
18-year-old got less responsible? Wait, what?
yeah, so that's what I'm dealing with these days. If you can, and mostly stupid 19-year-old stuff. Like he's not going out doing drugs and getting wrecked and whatever, but he's just, and I was that age too, and I did the same stuff he's doing. But it makes me think more like, shoot, like if I could be intellectually honest for a second, I believe every 18 to 21-year-old should have the right to keep and bear arms. They're adults. But frankly, I kind of wish there was a way to make it conditional upon, I don't know, some sort of unconstitutional test. How the heck do we do that? And I'm just being extremely honest with you guys. I'm not, I don't even know how to reconcile that in my own mind because I feel hypocritical even saying it. But, and I'm not taking up a position where I don't.
We're not making policy.
What's that?
We're not making policy. We're having a conversation.
Right. So, and I also don't believe that, you should punish an entire age group for the sins of kids that are psychos or mentally ill. So that there's that too. I don't ever believe that we should, because there's plenty of 46-year-olds my age out there that
Well,
are complete
and I think
lunatics that shouldn't have guns.
I'm just gonna, because you don't have to be on the spot. I think that's the response though, is that there are, so we talk about red flags. Okay, so why are red flags bad? Well, on the surface, or just on the most obvious thing is if you're got somebody who's so stressed out and potentially at risk that you don't want them to have a violent thing, then why would you rush in unexpectedly and take one violent thing and then leave? Because that's what red flag laws. Red flag laws aren't, let's come in and take you to a place. They're come in and let's take your guns away. And now they've weaponized them. So, you know what I'm saying? Like they're dang, now I got stuck on wherever I was going. So dang, where was I going with that one? The red flag laws are
weaponizing
well, there's
the
I was going after whatever. I don't remember where I was going. That happens after many hours of chatting.
yeah.
Okay, so let me go back to something else. Unless somebody else got some. I cut Ghost off before. Sorry, I just didn't know. I wanted to get Toby's on that, and I didn't know how long Toby's going to be here.
Yeah, and I got to bail in about 10 minutes anyway, but
okay, well then I'm going to ask you this question. So have I asked you when we were chatting before about the things like Red October in Nevada, or the Clash, what do they call it, Clash Bash in Texas?
I don't think so.
Okay, so there's sort of hybrids between a range event, something like SHOT Show Media Day, and a gun show, and almost like a, what do they call that when they dress up nowadays, like a Comic Con or something, and then a little bit of a swap meet and a little bit of a competition. So they go to a range that's outdoors in Vegas. Have you been to Boulder Gun Club?
No.
One? No, wait, not Boulder. The one that's closer to Vegas. The one that's what's the name of that one where they did their event?
And Cherries?
Yeah, Aunt Terry's did theirs.
I'm pretty sure it is Boulder.
Okay, so anyway, it's a nice gun club that's outdoors and lots of facilities there, so plenty of room to stretch out. And like I say, they had a big competition, and the bays were like media day, where manufacturers and people could set up and let you pull the trigger on items. You could buy stuff because it was more like a gun show in the respect that you could just buy stuff that you just had a chance to shoot. And then there was like a swap meet element where people could show up and trade kind of thing. And then there was just people doing displays and having fun, and good people dressing up. Now these are focused on the Kalashnikov. That's why they got my attention. But also because I'm super passionate about the community and gun shows and gun shops and just the evolution of stuff. So media events and industry events, are on my radar as well. But this idea of like the good parts of the trade shows or the media events, and then the open to the public element of it is kind of the evolution of, I don't know what to call it. It's like the evolution of a gun show. It's the evolution of like you've got the big event in Pennsylvania, the big Great American Outdoor Show. It's like a mini version of that. Something like that. Do you think that there's any potential? I guess I was asking if you knew about these things, and now that I've described them in some extent, do you think there's any potential of things like that creating awareness, bring in more, like giving people who are already into guns a little bit more, giving them more to get into, more experience, or like I said, the people that are outside of it completely getting a taste?
Yeah, I participate in a event like that up in the Northeast called the Live Free or Die shoot up in New Hampshire, and I have a great time with that. I've taught a class or two at that event, so it's kind of like this big show, very similar to what you explained.
Okay, yeah. Could you please describe that one? Because I've actually tried to look for that one and I couldn't find nothing. Is it still happening?
I don't know if it's going to keep happening, because I was just wondering the same thing. It usually happens in September or October, and I don't remember seeing any flyer come out for it. But they have a big vendor tent with, tons of really good vendors, and usually local. There's some that travel up from like Pennsylvania area, but a lot of the manufacturers are local. And then they have an open range where you can just go shoot your gun and do what you want with that. Then they have a machine gun range, and there's always one particular shop there that is running the machine gun rentals, and you can rent, I don't know, 20 different machine guns. And then they have some free uh, like symposiums, if you will. They're not the full class that you would sign up for. Like if a class is typically an 8-hour class or a 4-hour class, it's usually a 2-hour block, and there'll be a carbine, defensive carbine, a defensive pistol, empty hand, like Krav Maga type thing, or so there's a bunch of different instructors. I've participated in it several times.
Demonstration? Like a
And,
demonstration or a participatory, like a brief course that you participate in, or like just a demonstration where
No.
they. Okay.
No, it's a course. It's a class. You participate. So you bring your gear. You get, from whatever instructor's class you sign up for. There's probably a dozen different instructors, and they have multiple pit ranges there. So there's 10 different classes going on at once, and you can sign up for Tatiana Whitlock's class, or Rob Pincus, or somebody else, Chuck Sullivan, myself. There was another guy there from what the heck was his name? It'll come to me. But there's 10 different guys that are trainers there that are doing little symposium type of mini classes. That's what they're called.
Yeah,
And
that's another level, because now you're able to see like a taste of like a $200+ class.
right. Yeah, and it's free. It's all free. You pay to get in the door to the event, and you can sign up for those classes ahead of time. They fill up, but you can sign up, sign on to them. And so I did a 2-hour defensive carbine class at that event, and there was 20 people in it. You know what I mean? And so it was really good exposure for the students and as well as the instructor. But then it all culminates at the end in this auction, and there's raffles, and in the tent and all the vendors kind of throw some stuff into the auction, and they raise some money for whatever group they're supporting that year. And it's pretty epic. And usually there's something at the end like that's a pretty cool, whether it be one big cool gun. One year we shot 200 pounds of tannerite, and that was pretty epic. You can imagine. And we shot, they had cars out on the machine gun range, so you could mow them down all day long. And so it's a fun event. But
No, that sounds exactly like what I'm talking about. I mean, obviously a little bit different, because these ones the ones I happen to be describing were kind of themed with Kalashnikov, and maybe they're a little slightly because they had the competition aspect. I don't know. Well, you said they had the courses, but nothing like a small couple of bays or anything where people could taste competition shooting.
Well, every year they've done a mini competition, and
the
last couple of years, Polymer 80 has sponsored that, so you could actually use the Polymer 80 gun or bring your own and run you through a course of fire. But it's not real serious as far as like, hey, I won the trophy, or I won the prize, or whatever. It's kind of like everybody, they'll give you your time, they jot it down, but they don't really score your targets and make deductions and all that. So, but it's more of a fun intro to competition type of thing. But it's an excellent event. We have a ball doing it, and I've participated in it 4 or 5 years, and I hope it continues. But my buddy puts it on. His name is he has a company called Freedom Hill Gear, and he actually works for Sports South. His name is Robin. What the heck's his last name? but anyway, it'll come to me his last name. But he's organized it every year, and I hope. But getting back to what the original question was, yeah, we've even talked about hosting something like that at our place, where we could do a 2 or 3 day event and get vendors and
Yeah.
have a little swap meet and all that type
Like
of thing.
exactly what I'm talking about, and that's exactly the question I was going to ask. Is I think that at least what I see is there's some potential for ranges and everybody that's involved in something like that, kind of or at least maybe, I don't know if gun show promoters have that in them, but to make that pivot or whatever it would be, but or if it's just going to be the next level of promoters that come up with these things, or if this one sounds like a person in industry said nobody's doing it, let's do it. And even if it comes up that way, I think that would be a whole nother level of creating interest where nothing's like that. We've grown up with just gun shows and stuff, and it's totally different when it's just it's like the gun shows are like the forums, and these are like the video chats.
Right. Yeah, and even in that one event that we did, the Live Free or Die shoot, there was still some people who would bring their M1 Garand and they'd be dressed in the whole World War II cosplay, or the canteen and the rucksack and the helmet and everything, and it was kind of cool. I would say they were the minority, but I appreciated it, the effort that went into that guy's passion behind the sport or the history.
That's the thing. You get the recreators, and then you get the historian people that are, the recreators usually are it's like, it's as long as it's close, they don't want to ruin history, so they'll get close enough and then go actually run around in it. And then you get the actual historians who maybe don't even wear it, but just bring it to show it off. And then you get the airsoft type of people that are just, again, playing, but in the kind of a less authentic, or less realistic, or worried about wearing a uniform, but just the emulating it kind of thing. So yeah, lots of different realms just right there in just that little aspect. But anyways, I thought that was I've seen that evolving and becoming more and more. And now I've seen something about the Live Free or Die event, and I knew it was some kind of an event, but they don't have like a website, or I think that's what I couldn't find a website. All I could get was like articles about it, kind of announcing it, which, so that I appreciate that. That gives me a lot of insight.
Yeah.
And it's like the way
here is the website, but they do have I'm on it right now. They have a Live Free or Die shoot, and I don't see any dates popping up, but maybe they're.
Now I know the concept, and it sounds like, again, if they're just having a bad year or something, they might take a year off, but now we know where it can come from again or whatever. And it sounds like a lot of people were involved.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, if you got to jump out, I do appreciate you jumping in. Just give you a break to jump out. Did you want to plug anything? I know you've got a couple of different projects. Feel free to plug them.
Yeah, if anyone wants to follow along on the radio show, rapidfireradio.us, I'd appreciate anyone who wants to subscribe to the Cape Gunworks YouTube channel or social media stuff. So yeah, that'd be great. Just I appreciate anyone who's willing to hear me drone on for more than 5 minutes, but we're trying to make our brand aware more on a national level for the sake of the internet, and our website or whatever. But if you just like and subscribe to my channel, I'll be thrilled. It's and I want to check out who was it that was on earlier? I don't know if he's still on, but the Gun Tuber Academy guy, maybe he can help me out, in that end of things. So but yeah, that's really what I got going on. Is we're still.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot, but yeah, I appreciate that you do the Grace Kelly show. So she is some kind of a radio host that's super popular in the Boston area, I guess. And on Tuesdays, your spot has been so popular that she's had you back on a regular basis to do a 2A Tuesday. For my reference, I think I don't know if I showed it to everybody before, but it would have been before you jumped in. I'm trying to put a schedule together. So do you know a time, Eastern time that starts?
Yeah, it's 2:05 to 2:45 every
Okay, so it's a
Tuesday.
45-minute show or 45-minute segment of her show, which is pretty impressive considering airtime isn't, you're not giving it away.
Yeah, I'm not paying for that time, which is, I
And
mean,
then, and that's an indicator that the audience is that interested, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, again, I appreciate you jumping into here and giving us insight, because you're able to give us, from that barometer, that there's that kind of interest. But then you also record the show that's the 2A Tuesday segment of her show. Then your show is called Rapid Fire.
yeah.
And that's 3 p.m. Wednesday.
It's 4 p.m. Eastern, usually. We
Okay.
do sometimes go an hour earlier or later, but it's generally Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And that's,
So it's an hour of you recording your radio show for
Right.
the broadcast, and then a second hour for your internet side, the podcast side, and then you end up following up and stuff with people who are there. And again, I appreciate that you're able to kind of juggle the live along with doing your, what you got planned for the show. And it's, not everybody can do that, or anybody bothers to do that. So it's the way you do it with recording and then distributing that for broadcast gives you an ability that the other radio shows don't capitalize on, they don't bother with.
Right.
So that's neat. So definitely, if people are thinking about listening to something on a Wednesday live, this is something that's interactive and worth listening to. It's also rapid fire because you got people calling in, leaving messages throughout the week and stuff, and then you're just kind of replying without being unrealistic, but but you're there to answer questions. So it's kind of a cool concept too. And beyond that, the shows get broadcast, I guess, through the regular terrestrial radio. So people in cars and waiting rooms and elevators and restaurants and every place else that's playing it, gun shops, I'm assuming, are hearing it throughout the weekend.
I hope so. That's the hardest thing for us to track. We have one radio station doesn't even do Nielsen ratings. They're a big powerhouse radio station down in Florida. So they just stopped paying for those results because they know they're the big dog in town. So the one in Jacksonville, Florida. And then I have the local radio stations that say we're moving up on the rating scale, whatever. I don't even know how you track it, but but unfortunately for me, that's the most costly way of doing my show is the broadcast medium is it very expensive. And we talked about it before, that, it's not sustainable unless I get some big sponsors to sponsor the show, or B, I get a ramp up in web sales. I'll always do the show as a podcast if I do away with the live radio or the actual traditional radio medium, but and I can still have the interacting part and do it live with all of the YouTubes and social media platforms we stream to. So that's cool. The really only thing, and those don't cost nearly what radio costs. So radio, I'll just eventually do away with it if I don't see the needle move enough. And let's face it, there's plenty of people out there that do a real good job at podcasts, and you don't need to do the radio. The reason we did it was originally a marketing thing for the local area. And then more and more people would catch on and listen to it. And then we thought, well, if we're expanding outside of our state with the web side of things, maybe we'll start to hit some other markets like Florida, Arizona. And I think, is that how you originally found me?
Yeah, I heard the show Saturday. And then I was like, well, that guy's pretty cool. He's like actually talking about 2A, because typically if a show comes on in the middle of the day on a Saturday about guns, it's going to be like, hey, buy this grip angle. What you need is a new red dot. Right. And it wasn't that. So then I was like, oh, that's cool. And then you were on Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And I was like, oh, now deal. I'm listening to this show. And then I was sick of listening to it as a recording. So I just started watching it live.
Got it. Yeah. So,
you got a hard stop, or do you got a minute if I shut this off?
No, I got a minute.
Okay. So we're going to end this. Echo is an amazing dude who's down in Florida and hosts long format conversations for reloaders and with AR guns 1776 You guys make a
Yes.
good team. Remember, let's not forget Dead Horse. When he's able to show up is another awesome influence to people in the community. So I don't want to blow you off, but I do want to shut up so that I can talk to Toby off air here real quick. So everybody understands why we're being an abrupt end here, but this isn't a show for production value. It's to get the conversation evolving past the platitudes and the echo chambers, right? With that in mind, thanks everybody for showing up. We had a couple of good hours here, 2 hours for 2A. And if you're listening to this in the future, I'm not independently wealthy. I have Patreons. They make it possible for me to spend the time on this. Patreons is like subscribing to something. So if you subscribe to Disney, you love Disney, everything they do, or you subscribe to, I don't know, some kind of ice cream service, take $20, go over to Patreon. It's a subscription service. You can subscribe to all kinds of people. Take $20 and give $5 to me, and then take the rest of that $15 and find people that you cherish, that you value what they're creating, and then do that for 5 months, and you're going to spend $100, and then come back and tell me when you have become a venture capitalist in what you value, in the content that you want to see created. Let me know if it was $100 well spent. And thanks to the 140 something people that make it possible for me to spend my time on this and not trying to con you into some new grip angle or some optic that probably don't need to worry about because they can get all dirty. Nobody talks about when you bleed all over an optic. All right, we'll end it there, and